That has to be tough. Tell me about that.
It is super conflicting. Our league made up of 144. I'm a mid-major kid. It was really hard to get into the league, even harder to stay in the league. We're coming off a championship season, so everything was kind of leading to, oh, this is going to be a great season again. Boom. Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, countless others after George Floyd. Lynchings going on in our country in 2020. Basketball is the last thing on my mind. Again, this directly affects me, it directly affects my fiance, it will directly affect our children. And I've never seen this much momentum, this much leverage behind the movement. And so for me, going into a bubble, I was taking myself out of having the impact that I want to have. I want to be on the front lines. I want to be in my communities of Philadelphia and DC and countless other communities around the country. And to be impactful means to be present. And so for that, I wanted to sit out and tackle this head on 100%, 2 feet in, not 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
I know we're supposed to be social distancing, but if you were here, I would hug you. Girl, you got it. You got it. You get what's going on. And I have to, amen, I applaud you. The league is dedicating this season to social justice, and we'll be wearing the warm-up shirts with the phrases Black Lives Matter and say your name on them. Black Lives Matter will also be on the courts during games, but you say people shouldn't be distracted by the crumbs. Explain what you mean by that.
Crumbs, to me, right now are T-shirts, our posts on Instagram, our fads that fade away.
Say it, please.
Taking down statues of racist slave owners that should have never been put up. Taking down names of buildings on college campuses that should have never been named that. That's crumbs. That's what they're giving.
And what's it like being a sextuplet? You always attract a lot of attention.
To our community. That's what they're giving to us in order to, here you go, we gave you what you wanted. This is us. We're giving you what you guys wanted. But no, I don't want crumbs. I want the whole plate. I want my entire meal. I came for my meal, okay? I'm hungry. So that's what I say. Don't get distracted by the crumbs. I'm so proud of the women that went into the bubble. I know they're going to do big things, and they're keeping the attention where it needs to be, whether it's having the names on the back of their jerseys or Black Lives Matter on the court. It's phenomenal. But we need real change. Real change is defunding our police departments and allocating that money into our marginalized communities, whether it's schools, hospitals, food, taking care of...
You don't worry about that slogan, that whole defund the police department, because a lot of people are afraid of that slogan. They think it means getting rid of police altogether.
Absolutely not. And that's, you're going to have, it's a spectrum. You're going to have people, there's always a spectrum for whatever reason in our country. You're going to have people that are like, get rid of police. You're going to have people that are just saying defund them. I'm one of those people that believes that, do we need our police departments? Yes, we need them to serve and protect our communities. But I do believe that they need to be defunded, and money needs to be taken out of departments and allocated up. Because especially in our marginalized communities, they're suffering.
I've got it.
A lot of effort.
I'm out of time, Natasha, but you were great. You should come work for us.
I appreciate it.
No, we can't do. We'll be right back. We have to. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
The most trusted name in news with Natasha Cloud. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's going to be a lot different in our house. It's going to be lonely.
And good evening once again. Day 1265 of the Trump administration. 119 days to go. Until our presidential election. The good news from the president today, he said, we are in a good place. In the real world and in most of the states of this nation, however, the coronavirus is surging. The realities of the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency are beginning to collide. As the U.S. just today has set a new single-day record of 56,311 new coronavirus cases. And within the past few minutes, NBC News has just confirmed The U.S. now has over 3 million confirmed cases. In that respect, we lead the world. More than 131,000 Americans have died, and yet here is how the president describes our current situation.
I think it's very important to note that we've done it right. Now we're open, and we want to stay open, and we will stay open. We're not closing. We'll put out the fires as they come out. I call them embers and fires and whatever you want to call them. Right now we're at a number, as you know, far lower than that. And where would you say we are today, Mike? About 130. So we're at 130, and we could be at way over 1 million right now, and I think it could have been 2.5 or 3 million people. So, but now we're open.
One influential model that's been used by the White House and others projects now more than 200,000 deaths by November 1st. This also says that some 40 to 45,000 lives could be saved if everyone in the nation agreed to start wearing a mask routinely. Today, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who we now have to hear from in interviews or on podcasts and not part of any official White House briefing, suggested state leaders need to take the lead on the issuance of making masks a requirement.
I am strongly in favor of mandating things. I don't like to be, authoritarian from the federal government, but at the local level, if governors and others essentially mandate the use of masks when you have an outbreak, I think that would be very important.
Despite concerns about the government's ability to manage this current surge, the president is now pushing for schools to reopen across the nation. That is traditionally, of course, a local matter, but he is vowing to lean on governors to make sure they fall in line.
We hope that most schools are going to be open. We don't want people to make political statements or do it for political reasons. I think it's going to be good for them politically, so they keep the schools closed. No way. So we're very much going to put pressure on governors and everybody else to open the schools, to get them open. And it's very important. It's very important for our country. It's very important for the well-being of the student and the parents. So we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on open the schools in the fall.
The desire to get back to normal comes amid a daily barrage of signs that we are far from beginning to get a handle on this virus. Texas now reports it has broken its single-day record, and that's saying a lot. Over 10,000 cases in 24 hours. It's just one of several Sunbelt states mostly trying to contain outbreaks. Hospitalizations are rising rapidly throughout our country along with cases. California, Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, all seeing record increases in virus patients. Testing capacity also now being strained as demand grows. In some cities, people have been forced to wait for hours to get a test. Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level today announced plans to get testing resources to parts of Texas, Florida, and Louisiana. Think of how long we've been at this. Personal protective gear for healthcare workers, remember that? Running low again. And there are new fears about equipment like masks and gowns having to be reused. Meanwhile, the administration has awarded $1.6 billion to Novavax to rush the development of a coronavirus vaccine, the largest deal so far in so-called Operation Warp Speed. This all comes as the U.S. has made its split from the World Health Organization official now. In another development, the WHO today did acknowledge what it called emerging evidence of the airborne spread of COVID-19. We also learned that the Brazilian president, Bolsonaro, an early and consistent coronavirus denier, has now himself tested positive. Brazil is home to the second highest number of cases. They trail only the United States. Tomorrow, Trump will host the leader of Mexico, President Obrador, whose nation is also dealing with an explosion in cases. Mexico has actually been quietly hardening its border with the United States. The two will discuss the new trade deal between the two nations and Canada, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau turned down the invitation from the White House. He implied this would not be a great time to travel to the U.S. As we noted, our presidential election less than 4 months away now. A new tell-all book written by Donald Trump's niece contains this damning assessment, and we quote, "If he is afforded a second term, it would be the end of American democracy." It's a lot to say, much more on that book just ahead in our broadcast. But first, Trump's former chief of staff portrayed the 2020 presidential race in the following terms.
So if the president can go back to drawing those contrasts between him and Joe Biden, that becomes a race between Trump and Biden, I think the president does extraordinarily well. He shows people, look, if you hire me, this is what you get. If you hire him, you end up with no jobs. If it ends up being a popularity contest, or worse, a referendum on President Trump, I think he's got some real headwinds to face.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching.
California is one of the large states that is having a large surge in coronavirus cases and hospitalizations right now. Arizona, of course, is in terrible shape right now. Texas is in terrible shape. Florida is starting to get really terrible really fast. All three of those states are now having hospitals overrun while their case numbers and hospitalization numbers just keep climbing every day. It's scary. But California is having a real problem, too. And here's something really specific that's going wrong in California. That was not just like a bad situation that arose from the mire of this epidemic. In California, part of their big problem right now was a single screw-up, a bad mistake that has now set off what is really a disaster. Here's what happened. By mid-April, one of the largest state prisons in California had a big coronavirus outbreak. It started as just a handful of cases at the California State Prison in Chino, but it soon became dozens of cases, prisoners and staff alike. At the time, there were more than 4,200 men imprisoned at Chino. That's nearly 20% more than the capacity that prison was built to handle. And of course, by their very nature, correctional facilities, and specifically overcrowded correctional facilities like Chino was, just a hotbed for any sort of contagious illness, any sort of outbreak. So when they knew that in mid-April, it was no wonder that by the following month, by May, coronavirus had just run through every dorm used to house prisoners at Chino. By the end of May, there were 635 confirmed cases at Chino. There were 9 men dead. Given the crisis they had on their hands, the State Department of Corrections, along with the State Attorney General, decided that they would transfer a whole bunch of prisoners out of that prison, out of Chino, and they would send them to other prisons in the state. One of those prisons was the infamous prison just north of San Francisco called San Quentin. Now, at the time, San Quentin had actually been doing very well in beating back the epidemic. So well, in fact, that at the time, San Quentin had no infections. San Quentin had no coronavirus infections in March, in April, and in May. But then came this influx of prisoners from Chino, which had a terrible problem there. More than 120 prisoners were transferred from Chino to that facility at San Quentin. And they'd all been tested at some point before transfer, but it wasn't like they were particularly sticklers for the timing. I mean, right off the bat, they knew there were problems. Many of the prisoners hadn't been tested for coronavirus for up to a month before they got sent from Chino to this new prison at San Quentin. And so at San Quentin, within days, they get the signs of their first infections. In the month or so since those transfers, San Quentin has now become the largest coronavirus outbreak in California. There have now been more than 1,500 confirmed cases at San Quentin alone, and at least 6 deaths. 3 of those deaths just came this weekend. And amidst this huge spike in more than 1,500 cases at San Quentin, well, now the top medical officer for California prisons has been fired. And now, with the virus having spread unabated throughout San Quentin, there's no wonder that a lot of people are worried on a lot of different levels, starting, of course, with the prisoners and with their families. Recently, we had the chance to speak with the mother of one prisoner at San Quentin. Her name is Rita Zavala. And she told us this about her son's cellmate recently testing positive and how her son is living now.
Our men, their lives matter too. They're human beings, just like everybody else. And they should be treated like that. Not like animals. And that's what I feel like they are treating them like. Just letting them sit there. You know, if you make it, oh good. If not, oh well. You know, and that's not how to treat a human. They made mistakes. They got there, but they're paying for their mistakes, you know, by being in prison. But my son wasn't sentenced to death. But I feel like he is now, because I don't know if he's going to get the virus and if he's going to make it through the virus, because their medical is not the greatest, you know?
The last point raised by Ms. Zavala is a critical one. It's not just the number of men that are dying at San Quentin that is the cause for alarm. It's also the huge number of prisoners who are positive there now who are requiring medical care. And they're requiring advanced medical care, which means they're getting it not just at the prison itself, but within the whole local healthcare system. Some hospitals within reaching distance of San Quentin have become so taxed already by San Quentin prisoners filling up their ICUs that they're no longer accepting any transfers of California state prisoners to their facilities. The situation's gotten bad enough that one local doctor told our NBC News affiliate in San Francisco that San Quentin is the Chernobyl of COVID. It's one thing to look at prison outbreaks as a story about prisoners and their fate and whether, in fact, a sentence to imprisonment should de facto become a sentence of death. In this case, though, this is bad enough in Northern California that this particular prison outbreak caused by the state is a serious problem for coronavirus in the whole state. I mean, yes, it's a problem for prisoners. Yes, it's a problem for staff. Yes, it's a problem for families of prisoners and staff. But yes, it's a problem for everybody. I mean, San Quentin is now the little engine that could, in terms of pumping out the virus into California and taxing the abilities of Northern California hospitals. Nowhere is that being felt more acutely than in Marin County, where San Quentin State Prison is located. 2 weeks ago, the president of the county's board of supervisors rang the alarm bell about the toll the outbreak was taking, not just within that prison, but on the county itself. She wrote a letter to Governor Gavin Newsom asking the state for help in getting this thing under control, not only so the prisoners can get the care they need, but so the local hospital system can withstand the huge stresses that they are now under because the largest outbreak in the state is in that prison. County supervisors sent out that cry for help 2 weeks ago. This weekend, Marin County set a couple of new coronavirus records. And the engine for coronavirus in Marin County is this prison.
Harvard just made a lot of news with their plan for the fall semester. Some students will be back on campus, but all classes, every single class will be virtual, and you're still going to pay $50,000 per year, even if your 19-year-old is in their childhood bedroom zooming into class. Harvard can do that because it's Harvard, and other Ivy League schools would claim the same. But higher education runs an enormous gamut, and all sorts of schools have a bunch of very complicated competing interests to figure out ahead of the fall semester. Joining me now, someone who studies higher education, technology, culture, and inequality for a living, has been chronicling what's been going on, Professor Tressie Millen-Cottom.